Greetings, this is Tanya Delavidine. This week's presentation is on bramble berries. By bramble berries, I mean blackberries, raspberries, dewberries, and other similar berries that you may be familiar. But before we get started, a little disclaimer, I'm not responsible for any injuries or illnesses that result from your actions. You are responsible to do your own research and most importantly, use your common sense. This information is brought to you solely as an educational guide with the best of intentions. It is imperative to always properly identify a plant as safe before you even touch it, let alone consume it. Use this information along with quality field guides, other reliable sources, and or a knowledgeable forager to assist you. As we're talking about berries, I want to let you know there's a lot of edible berries out there, but there's a lot of poisonous berries out there. By poisonous, I mean there are certain types of plants that have berries that are so poisonous that it only takes 1, 2, 3, 4 berries to kill an adult, let alone a child. Be very mindful of this. Do not put anything in your mouth unless you absolutely know that it is safe to do so. All right, we're going to be talking about some safe berries here. We're talking about brambles. Brambles, they get the name because it was derived from their thorny bushes. We're talking about plants that are in the rose family. This is in the genus called Rubus. That actually means bramble. These are perennials. Now, what we're looking at here on this page, they're native ones, but there are bramble berries all around the world. On the left here, we have the Allegheny Blackberry. In the middle, we have the American red raspberry, and we have black raspberries. We're going to talk about the differences as we go through this presentation. Also, these illustrations are available at the USDA Plants Database. I will put the link in the description below. Please check it out. It is a great resource for all plants. Before we get started, there are so many different types of blackberries. There's also very many types of raspberries as well. But this just shows a pretty cool, kind of an overview of a few. It's pretty cool, a picture that I got from the USDA. What we have here is the Allegheny Blackberry. We have a thornless blackberry, a swamp blackberry, and we have a Himalayan Blackberry. You might wonder, why does that have to do with me? We're not even in Asia. Well, this is actually an invasive one, so you might come across it. It is a very aggressive one as well, but the berries are edible. So the more you eat, the less it can spread because it won't be spreading those seeds. So you'll be doing the environment a favor if you can eat more of those because that will keep it from being such an aggressive spreader. Also, if you're on the West Coast, you might find the Western thimbleberry. If you're on the West Coast, you might also find what is known as a salmonberry, which looks like a raspberry, except for the color of the fruit could be yellow, orange, or red. So quite a different thing. And the reason they allegedly call it salmonberry is because the Native Americans used to eat it along with the salmon they caught. Not because of other reasons, but I would say it probably because it looks kind of salmon in color too. There's always, a few different stories and explanations for one thing. So just go with what feels good to you on that. And of course, there's a trailing blackberry as well. Anyway, just want to show that variety. And I also want to point out what could be a lookalike to blackberries. Well, that was a really good question that had been presented to me, so I want to show you that there are quite a few lookalikes to blackberries. We have the dewberry, which is going to look like a blackberry growing on the ground, maybe a blackberry that wasn't as good of an achiever and didn't decide to grow high. Well, it's actually just a different species, and they're not as they don't have as many different aggregate fruits put together, or many of the individual fruits put together. They're going to be smaller, but they're still edible. Keep in mind, we'll talk about why I choose not to eat the dewberries. You might also find a mulberry, which is actually a tree. So you'll find the fruit growing in a tree. It's not a shrub. It is not a bush. It is literally a tree. The one thing with those, they are not technically aggregate fruit. They're known as multiple fruits, but let's not get too much into that kind of details. But the point of it is, they're totally safe to eat. There's white mulberries. There's red mulberries. There's hybrids of them, so you might find kind of variations. The white mulberries are obviously not going to look like blackberries, but the red ones do because they actually look like a deep, blackish purple. Keep in mind, though, I do want to say with the mulberries, do not eat unripe mulberries. They can be mildly hallucinogenic. Another lookalike would be a boysenberry, and that comes from the loganberry, which you might look at that and say, well, that doesn't even look like a blackberry down in that corner there. But the reason that's there is because the boysenberry is a hybrid, as is loganberry. The boysenberry is a hybrid. Let me see if I can get this correct. I believe it is the European blackberry, the European raspberry with the American dewberry with the loganberry. And the loganberry is a hybrid of an American blackberry with a European raspberry. Okay, let's just keep that straight, right? And then, of course, a very common look-alike is the black raspberry. As we go through here, we're going to show some of the differences between a raspberry and a blackberry. But again, they're all edible. Just a kind of a, a difference to know the difference. That way, you're confident in your identification if you explicitly know what it is you're eating. I got a quote here from Green Dean from Eat the Weeds, which is a great resource website that you can check out. It states on his website, quote, "Lastly, there is one interesting note about aggregate fruit. At least one expert says 99.99% of aggregate fruit are edible, such as blackberries, mulberries, loganberries, etc. Personally, I would have liked to have seen listed the non-edible 0.01%. And what he means by that is, what exactly is this inedible one? Because that's a question. But maybe that's just a catch-all, so if something does happen, you can say, well, I never said 100% of them were, and I guess you're just covering yourself. But I've never met a poisonous one, so if you do, let me know. So we're going to talk first about blackberries specifically, and this is, again, they're still in the Rubus genus, as are the raspberries, but we are going to show the differences between them. Keep in mind they can hybridize, as we've seen with loganberries and boysenberries, and there's so many other different types as well in cultivars that they might find at Lowe's or something that you can buy. But that being said, keep in mind the stuff you're going to find frozen in the store is going to be a type of blackberry known as a Marionberry, which is a cultivar, and they grow that. And they, of course, do that because of greater yield, consistent taste, sweetness, etc. But in the wild, we're going to find, a wide variety of native blackberries and also some non-native that have been brought up. As we can see here from the map from the USDA Plants Database, orange indicates that it's both native and non-native. Again, these are perennials. You might find shrubs, subshrubs, vines, depending on which species you do encounter. Firstly, we're going to talk about the Allegheny Blackberry. It's very common in my area of mid-Atlantic states. I refer to it as Fayette County Blackberry, but that's because that's where I'm from, and that's the only thing I ever knew as a child growing up, and these are the berries that we pick. This is a very, very common one, so you might find it. Of course, we're going to have thorns. We're going to look a little bit at the canes and the actual thorns so you can tell the difference. But again, when you're looking for this plant, you're going to want to see that aggregate fruit. You're going to want to see thorns, unless, of course, it's a thornless blackberry, but they're not very common in the wild. And as you can see here, the map, this is the distribution map. They're very, very common in the eastern and central part of the United States. You might find another type of blackberry known as a sawtooth. It just means that there's like the teeth along the margins of the leaves are definitely more like a saw. Fruit, again, you're going to be looking for that. You can look at some of the differences in the way the berries look. But again, you're going to still have the basic characteristics. It's just the bracts of these kind of pull back a little bit differently than some of the other ones. But again, they're still going to be very similar. We have those 5-petaled white flowers, which is what we are going to expect to see when we're dealing with blackberries, at least all the ones I've encountered. Now, this one is known as the smooth blackberry, the Canadian blackberry, or the thornless blackberry. What's interesting about this one is, well, you don't really see those thorns that are going to get you, which is really, really nice. I've never encountered one of these, but they obviously are in my area. Maybe I just haven't paid too much attention. They're definitely known to be a choice species of blackberries. They're supposed to be sweet, juicy, richly flavored. The fruit can be pressed into cakes and then dried for later use as well. It's also known as the smooth high bush blackberry as well. Maybe I'll keep a better eye out there, but all the blackberries I seem to find are the ones that, of course, are going to scratch me all up. Still worth it. Definitely worth it. This is known as a sand blackberry, so you're going to find this along, the more the coastal areas is where it's going to thrive because it does like a sandier soil than you're going to find with like the Allegheny Blackberry. And you can look at the illustration here for the way that the thorns and stuff go. You have more rounded type of leaves on here. They have more strawberry looking type of leaves in some fashions as well. Again, strawberries are in the rose family as well, so not surprising there. And this is what's known as the old field blackberry. You can just check out the illustrations, see some of the differences. As you can see with this one, it has the 3 leaflets, and then it has the 2 down at the bottom. So that's quite a little bit of a difference in the configuration. And you might also, if you're around, you might see a cut leaf blackberry. This is a non-native one. As you can see, it has very sharp cuts in the leaf margins, and it looks, quite different than the other types of blackberry leaves that we've seen. And this is classified as a shrub, a subshrub, or a vine, so you might see that. This is one I've never seen, a setose or a bristly blackberry, but it does exist, and it's more than a northern region. It does like a little bit of a colder climate, but this one has the kind of the thorny hairs all up on down it, and which is kind of interesting because we're going to see the Japanese wineberry have a lot of this type of hairs as well. But the assuming that I've never seen this one in color, but there would be some differences. But again, both of them are edible. Of course, this is a blackberry, and we're going to see with the wineberry, the Japanese wineberry, that's actually red. Just some of the differences. This is known as the Yankee blackberry or the leafy bracted blackberry. So we can maybe counter some of those. So the whole point of showing all these different ones is not to have you learn all of them, is just to let you know there's a lot of variability in the leaves. There's some variability with whether there's thorns or lots of little hairs on these, so keep those things in mind. There's got to be, a little kind of open to understanding that you're going to be looking for those fruits. You're going to be looking when it's flowering for those 5-petaled leaves. You're going to be looking for canes, or trailing vines, depending. If you obviously are looking at a tree, you're not looking at a blackberry. If you're looking at, something that is on a like herbaceous plant, you're not looking at a blackberry. We're going to be thinking about, when we're dealing with shrubs and subshrubs, we're looking at like a little bit of a woodiness to those, that we're not looking just a green stem as we would be looking at with an herbaceous plant. So keep these things in mind. So again, these are just some pictures that I've taken of the leaves. And what's interesting about the leaves, this is kind of possibly surprising, but those young leaves, you can eat them. You can chop them up, put them in a salad. You can make cheese out of it. And we're also going to learn that the roots can actually be used, but they're going to be used for a medicinal purpose. Like many plants in the rose family, in fact, probably nearly all, because it's a pretty key feature of it, is there's astringency to these plants. So what I mean by astringency, astringent means tightening, so and pulling in tissue. So these plants are going to help with different conditions, especially things like, we'll talk about that after we get to the medicinal. We're still going to think about the edible first. But anyway, that's a way that you can kind of test them out, is the astringency. It's going to be tightening. It's going to, feel like that as you can do it. So anyway, here on the left-hand side, we have some pictures of the berries. Of course, the purple black ones, those are the ripe ones. The red ones are not ripe. And of course, you have those kind of green whitish. Those are just starting to form. Blackberries do better when there's a fair amount of rain in the summer. We have a really dry season this year, so it's not doing so good. I'm not expecting them to do great. A lot of them are suffering right now, and I don't expect them to be coming out next month with a lot of juicy berries, because most of them are drying up, unfortunately. That's how it happens. So where we have, this is a young new growth, so we have all those fresh leaves. You can collect those and dry those out. Don't eat old leaves, only eat young leaves. They get some compounds in them as they get older that aren't fit for human consumption, so be mindful of that. This picture on the right-hand side I took a few years ago, and that was a really good yield for the year. The year was doing really good. We had a fair amount of rain, and the berries were quite delicious and plentiful. Now we're going to look at black raspberry, and as you can see, the flowers look less showy than we saw with the blackberries. Very common. And a very key thing about the black raspberry that we are not going to see with the blackberries is when you turn those leaves on the underside of a black raspberry, you are going to see white, or nearly white. You do that to a blackberry, you're going to see green. That is a very easy way to identify the difference. Another way to identify the difference is that the black raspberries are going to definitely ripen before the black berries, at least around my region and the species that I have of blackberries. So that is another key thing, but we'll talk about one other way to tell a blackberry from a black raspberry. One, typically with the raspberries, they're more rounded like this. But the key thing is when you pull that berry off of the stem that it's growing on, it is going to be hollow in the center, and you're going to see the cone that it's sitting on remain on the plant. When you pull a blackberry, it is not going to be hollow in the center and have that, hole where it is got that divot in it. You are going to see a little stem. So we shall see that in a few minutes. So these are some unripe blackberries that are still on the thing, but you can see someone, probably me, ate the ripe ones. So anyway, it would not be surprising. I had some actually tonight as well when I was out walking on the trail. And here you can clearly see the contrast of the green leaves on top and the white on the bottom. This is just some pictures of the red raspberry, so you might see those. This is a indicating that red raspberry, that we have non-native and native varieties in the United States. Next, we're going to see the Japanese wineberry. Of course, this is definitely non-native. Now, as you can look at this, we're going to see the key characteristics of the raspberries being when you flip those leaves, it's going to be white underneath. You can see a little bit in that picture, but you see all these bristly hairs. This has bristly hairs and thorns. So it doesn't seem to want to show that there's thorns in the picture. I'm going to tell you there are, because we can see it right here. And I touched one tonight and ate some of these tonight as well. Both of these are ripe right now, the black raspberries and the wineberries, and we're talking mid-July. I'm going to do shorts of those, of being outside rather than putting it in this video, so just stay tuned for that. So this is definitely what you're going to see. These are really nice hardy things. With them being non-native, they really thrive here. You're going to find them basically anyway. There's disturbed area and sun. They love it along bike trails, riversides, parks. If they can get in there, they're going to. They're absolutely edible. Please eat them all. They're definitely taking over a little bit, but they are quite delicious. So this just shows you a picture of the cane, very distinctive, quite in contrast to our black raspberries and the blackberries that we've seen already. Also, when these are flowering, these still have hairs all around the bracts and unfolds. You get this little flower that comes out, of course, white, 5-petaled. And as we see here on the right-hand side, even when the berries are forming, we see those green berries, it is still wrapped in all those hairs. Then when it pops out, as you can see, the ripe ones are already gone because they are absolutely delicious. And as you can see, just like with the raspberries, they do leave the cone holder and there would be that divot inside. These are some very ripe wineberries here. Of course, some of them are missing, and we do have some that are unripe in varying stages, which is perfect because you can eat the ripe ones now and then come back later in a couple days or a week and get some more. This is going to show you the difference between the canes of the blackberry, the black raspberry, and the wineberry. So on the left-hand side, we have a very purplish brown cane. Now, sometimes you might see it have grooves on it, depending on what species it is. That's not uncommon. You're going to get those rose-like, curved-backed, recurved thorns. Not uncommon to see. Also, the black raspberry this is a purple cane. You might not see the purple underneath. Sometimes it's green, but what the key thing is it's going to have this white outer coating. So that's very, very common as well. And on the right-hand side, you have the wineberry. So it's going to have all those multiple leaves, and that's very, common. It's indicative of it. As we have here on the left-hand side, we have a blackberry in the center. We have some black raspberries. You see those divots. And on the right-hand side, you have the inside of a wineberry, and it's juicy ripe sitting there. And we have, again, that hole in the center, which is a key characteristic of the raspberries. So how are we going to use the bramble berries? Well, we can just eat them. We can eat them raw. We can make jelly out of them. We can make teas, cold drinks, throw some berries in there, infuse our drinks. The young shoots of the blackberry, you can have in the spring, add them to salad, juice them, blend them. The leaves, late spring to early summer, tea, added to salads. Again, the Raspberries, a lot of them are kind of a little hairy, fuzzy, kind of not exactly tender. Better to make teas out of them instead of adding them to salads. But the blackberries, at least the species around here, they're pretty tender. You can chop those up, add them to your salads. The flowers you can have from April through June, add those to salads. Keep in mind, if you eat all the flowers and everything like that, you might not have any berries. So you take what you want from it. The leaves are astringent and effective in treating diarrhea. That's what I was trying to avoid saying earlier. And dysentery. They help with stomach pain, alleviate menstrual cramps, especially the raspberry leaves. They're used to strengthen pregnant women, again, especially the raspberry leaf, and aid in childbirth, especially the raspberry leaf. Soothe mouth sore throats. The roots, teas and tincture, blood tonic for boils, purifying, astringent like leaves. Now, again, that's really good, especially in the blackberries. They're really good at using the roots for that. The wash, you can use the leaves for sores, ulcers, boils. So next we're going to talk about dewberry. And the reason that I don't particularly like to eat dewberries is because they grow so low on the ground. It means that any animal that was out walking the night before, whether it be a neighborhood dog or raccoon or skunk, where do you think they're going to go to the restroom? Well, probably over top of your little dewberry that you might be eating tomorrow. So I try to avoid it and eat things that are a little bit higher up off the ground. Again, it's up to you. Are we in a survival situation? Not yet. If we are, maybe I'll change my mind on this. But until that point, I don't eat these, but I do appreciate their beauty. They're going to flower in the late spring. They're going to fruit in the summer, typical to all the other ones we've been talking about. These are flattened shrubs less than a foot high with round and angular trailing stems and blackberry-like fruits. They're prostrate. That means they're crawling and spreading. There's lots of different types. There's a northern dewberry. There's also a southern dewberry. And we're kind of in the middle where we might have either, and maybe they've hybridized. We don't really know. The northern dewberry is also known as the American dewberry, the whiplash dewberry. It's also called the common dewberry. Quite a beautiful plant. Looks like a raspberry that, just isn't as big, but again, quite edible if you need it. These are some more pictures of the northern dewberry. I think they're adorable. I think this picture on the right-hand side is just like super cute. This is a dewberry. This is not a ripe dewberry. This is still in the phase. Again, we're also going to know that they're ripe is when, if you're confused whether it's a red raspberry or black raspberry, for example, if you gently pull on it and it says, no, I'm good staying here, and it's still hard, it's just not ripe, okay? When they're ripe, they come off really easily and they're soft, and everything like that. You don't want them mushy because that means they're overripe, but you'll get it. It'll all come around. Another type of dewberry is known as the Bristly Dewberry. You just might see that around. You might just see some variability. That's the whole point of this. It's just showing that there's quite a variety even in, the dewberries versus that. Now, another interesting one you might find in the eastern United States, quite a showy one, is the purple flowered raspberry, also known as the purple flowering raspberry. This is very similar to what we would see with a thimbleberry, but a thimbleberry is going to be on the west coast, and we are on the east coast. This is a native one to our region, quite a beautiful one. And it's interesting because it doesn't have thorns, but it has these sticky hairs to prevent like the creatures from crawling up its stems and eating its delicious fruit. And this is going to flower from June through September. They're flowering right now, so there are no berries as of yet. And it's going to fruit from July through September, depending. You know, that's going to be, some variability. And I would say flowering should probably go until August. I don't think that should really truthfully say September. I think I'm going to change that. But anyway, you may find them. There's variability wherever you might be. And of course, that does occur. But I expect to see these out in a few weeks. And they're quite delicious. They're a little bit on the drier side, but, nice trail-side nibble. They don't really travel that well. These are some ones before they they're just forming. They're not even anywhere close to being ripe. As you can see, these flowers are quite showy, quite beautiful, quite a deep purple. And on the left-hand side, you see, the leftover fruit that other ones aren't doing so well. There's that one still standing. And what's also interesting about this raspberry, it has maple kind of shaped leaves. It's not a maple, of course. It just has that similar shape. And as we see here on the left-hand side, you can see what the inside of it looks like. It's very distinctive. It's not like, it doesn't have those divots as, just like a cone that is, been pulled out. We would see with the black raspberries and the wineberries, but it's almost like a thimble where it actually just sits on top of there. So when you peel it off, look what it leaves. I mean, it leaves this white undercoating here, right here. This is after it's been pulled off. And these are just unripe. These are ripe. This has been removed. It's hard to almost tell, right? They're quite delicious. I picked these a few years ago, and I was quite delighted to find these. You can definitely find them a lot along the Great Allegheny Passage. I've definitely found them in other areas of Garrett County, Maryland, along, especially along roadsides and stuff. It does like a lot of sun. It's growing in Ohio Pow in various locations along the bike trail and along near Cucumber Falls if you're out that direction. So the purple flowering raspberry, purple flowered raspberry, however you want to call it, 3 to 6 feet can be, it's a pretty big one, and it stands pretty high. It's not one that's going to be on the ground. The berries are going to be sweet tart. They're slightly dry, like I said. They can be eaten raw or dried. They can be made into a jam. It's kind of hard, they're not as stable as, as far as not falling apart. But if you're going to make them in a jam, they're already going to be broken down anyway. It's totally fine. Identification, as we said, maple-like leaves, thornless stems with sticky reddish hairs, berries dull red, somewhat flattened, cup-shaped. You're going to find them in moist rocky woods, ravines, thickets, things of that nature. Definitely likes a little bit of moisture. They're high in vitamin C and vitamin A. They're used to treat scurvy. The leaves can be dried in powder and poultice to treat wounds and burns. Leaves, you can make a poultice fresh to treat acne. The leaves and the roots you can use for treatment for nausea, diarrhea, dysentery. Again, we see the same things that we saw with the blackberries and the other brambles. We had that astringency. Now the leaves, they have been used as a natural toilet paper. So now we've talked a little bit about the brambles. So please get out there and look for some this summer. Right now, in my area, we have the black raspberries quite ripe, and the wineberries are ripe. Pretty soon, we're going to have the purple flowering raspberries and the blackberries. In order of these pictures, we have black raspberry, Japanese wineberry, blackberry, probably an Allegheny Blackberry, and then we have the purple flowering raspberry on the right-hand side. I hope that helped, and please leave your questions, comments down below. Really appreciate your time and attention in this matter. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Please like the video. It does really help, and I would appreciate it. We need to get this information out to other people because the more free food we can get, we can kind of offset inflation and all that other kind of things that's going on in 2022. It's good to get out there and learn what we can eat because one day, if you're out lost in the woods, this might save your life. All right. Peace and love, everyone. Thank you very, very much.